And we have another caller waiting. We're going to go ahead, and I just want to identify my guests again. It sounds like people have maybe not been listening from the beginning or have lost track of who they are. We have Bud Rivers here. He is the Searsport Emergency Management Director. We're going to let him respond to some of the safety concerns. We have Peter Tabor and Astrig Tanguay, both of whom are Searsport residents as well. Bud Rivers is in support of the LPG facility that's being proposed for Searsport. Astrig Tanguay and Peter Tabor are opposed to it, and this is a WERU special. Will be going on for the next hour and a half now. We've preempted our regular programming to bring you this special and this controversial issue at a time when more people can participate. And we appreciate your calls and your patience as we're trying to answer questions and get to the calls as quickly as we can. Bud and then I think Peter both wanted to comment on the last caller.
I have.
Let's get a little closer to the microphone.
It's the dissertation was so long. I think I forgot the first issue that came up. That
putting out the. He was saying that your example of putting out the fire at the hotel with water doesn't compare with a potential disaster at the LPG facility.
I just checked the DOT handbook, and I'm going to have in the near future a computer program for all of our hazards that we can use in town where I can use it using wind direction and fire size, fuel supplies and stuff like that. I can predict actual radiuses. The radius in the DOT handbook for isolation around a propane tank fire is 1 mile. Okay, so any discussion about what could happen outside of that radius is not founded on what the DOT regulations require.
And how many, what's within 1 mile of this facility?
There are facilities within that, so that if we did have an event down there, we would be considering in our emergency plan whether, where, and if we had to evacuate people or isolate people, warn people in that area, and we have the mechanisms in place to do that.
And what about General Alum, or GAC? What about the
GAC,
chemical facility?
Same thing. GAC, I compared all of their chemicals that are listed. They have, by law, are required to provide the community with information, and it's in our emergency plan, and it's in their emergency plan that we have. And I went and checked all of the chemicals that they have identified, hazardous chemicals that are in reportable quantities at GAC, and the largest downwind radius where I would have to consider the initial response radius is 300 meters. The largest downwind protection consideration radius is like 1.7 miles.
Is that with the release or if they're on fire?
That's a release.
There's a fire.
Okay. Fires are the biggest, like if a chlorine releases, a chlorine fire is not the thing that's going to bother people. Chlorine, if it gets above the SDEL, is a very, very deadly gas. The other comments that have been made about the dispersion, wind will disperse. Even though propane is heavier than air, if there is a wind, it will disperse. And that's one of the things, if it's not burning and we can't isolate the leak, we use water sprays to help that process along.
And GAC advertises themselves as making specialty to-order chemicals for clients as well. I contacted or attempted to contact them several weeks ago to find out, to get the material safety data sheets on those, and didn't get any response. Do you know in advance, or does anyone have any kind of approval of what they decide to make for a client and whether or not that's compatible with a fire plan for an LPG tank within a mile or so distance?
I have their all-hazard emergency plan, spill and fire response plan, and it discusses their processes, the chemicals that go into their processes, and what their initial response are. And we have in town the Waldo County Hazmat decon strike team that, should there be an event down there, the initial responders would be the technician level responders would be GAC employees. If they need off-site support or off-site protection, they would call 911, would call out our fire department for initial response. We would go to an off-site location so that we didn't go charging into the scene.
Okay, kind of getting a little bit sidetracked.
Okay.
What I'm specifically asking about, because I've
The
heard it
answer
brought
is
up
yes,
a few times.
we do know what they
You know
have.
exactly what they have there. Because what
and-
you hear said at these meetings a lot is that the word in town has always been that if people had any idea what was in those tanks down there or what was being done at that chemical facility, they wouldn't worry at all about an LPG terminal. And I've heard that said by at least 3 different people at the last 2 public meetings. I don't know what that means, if that's an
Maybe-
urban legend.
maybe
you want to
those-
answer that, Astrig?
Maybe those people don't know, but
You feel like you have a good
I
handle on
have
it.
that information, and the county emergency
Okay.
response people have that information.
Okay.
And we have it in our fire trucks.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, first thing I'd like to ask is that anybody in Searsport and Stockton go to the town office and ask to look at the General Alum Corporation's EHS plan. We have the right to see it under the Clean Air Act, and that gives all of the information about the chemicals, including a 25-mile plan for what could happen. But we asked a question of Bud and of James Gilway, our town manager, just last week about, is there ever a time when a chemical is so bad or a product so dangerous that we would stop it from coming into the port? And they told us no, that would be considering interrupting trade and that they would not interfere with free trade.